before with a disclaimer that I am not a doctor or a health practitioner, and that also these sessions are recorded. I also want to let you know that I had a mistake in this slide because I had my OSHA outreach authorization number wrong. So my OTI in San Diego helped me say, oh, you're providing everyone the wrong number. I'm like, I'm so sorry. And so she was able to give me the right numbers. I actually put the general industry ones on the screen, but I have two more for the construction industry in California and federal government. So if you're interested in doing a 10-hour or 30-hour OSHA class for your company, let us know. Lindsay will organize it and we'll be happy to do it. I am bilingual, as you know, so it'd be great because then everybody speaks your language, the safety after all, right? There will be a class in Irvine that I will be doing. I will be teaching. It's hosted by UCLA, so same as today. So thank you, Lindsay, for your awesome work. And Annie here at the Continuing Education Department. You guys are great. And they're putting together a 10-hour OSHA class. And they will extend the Cal OSHA 10-hour card for you. And it doesn't expire. We do recommend you take it again after 5 years because we forget everything. But it'd be awesome if you take the time to go. It'll be the last week of February. And it is open already for registration. So please make sure you sign up for it. All right. So what are the learning objectives? We always go through the learning objectives. And at the end of the session, quick session, it'll be just 1 hour. You should come out with some to-dos. I always say, hey, there's a list of to-dos for you. So the first one, we're going to talk about top 10 most cited, but it's always with the objective of seeing, what are the particular safety standards that we're looking at and they're frequently cited in California. So first objective, take a look at the 10 top most cited and then explain the reasons why these particular safety standards are so frequently cited in California. And then last but not least, analyze the risk and hazards associated with the non-compliance. After all, what we talk about today, the goal of it is to improve your safety program, but in a way that is not just going back and writing a new plan or just changing a sign, but to make it effective, translating it into the workers got something out of this. So although you may be the manager, the supervisor, the human resources director, etc., taking this back to the workers is what really, really, really matters. All right. So if you have questions, you can post them on the chat or raise your hand. And Lindsay will, if I am too into whatever I'm saying, Lindsay will say, hey, Alba, there's a question. And so we can answer questions as we go. It's good to interrupt. I'm not a person that doesn't like interruptions, especially in classes like this. Maybe in person, I will ask for everyone to wait till the end, but I want to hear your voice if that's something that you want, or anything in the past you guys participate and tell me this happened to me, or yeah, this is a resource that I have. Okay, so number one, no, of course you expected this. Hey, and I did it backwards. When you go to YouTube and you do top 10 top songs of 2023, they'll start with number 10. I started with number 1. So I realized but it's too late to change my entire presentation. I'm like, just give it to them. Top number 1, right? Injury and illness prevention program. No surprise. We've talked about this for so long. And if you've been in my IIPP class through same UCLA Continuing Education Department, you remember that this was a lengthy class. And we actually did exercises where you actually put together, okay, so how should this read? And how does it translate into real practice? Some of the most common mistakes that we make is that we don't even know where this program is. So even you may even have it, but to you it's not there. You have no idea which file to look under. So if OSHA was ever to show up because of a serious citation or because someone complained, or because you were randomly chose because you're in a high hazard list and voila, OSHA is knocking at your door. Knock on wood, hopefully not. You don't know where it is. So please, if you don't know where your injury and illness prevention program, which is an actual written document with 8 elements, and we're going to see some examples today, the actual document by Cal OSHA. And I'll tell you a little bit about why I want you to use the Cal OSHA document. Many times you hire a consulting firm and or your attorneys, your legal department will write an injury and illness prevention program that is super lengthy. I highly recommend to all of my clients to use the Cal OSHA model program and work from there, because there's nothing better than having an OSHA inspector show up and then voila, there is the Cal OSHA document. And hopefully you did erase the word model or sample program and you put your actual logo and you customized it. That's key, right? So that's one. Number two, many times it's not known throughout your company that you actually have a document that is called an injury and illness prevention program. And for short, we'll always say it is an IIPP, right? And every time I explain that, the IIPP, and the workers go like, what is that? And I look at them and it's like, it's not that I have to go to the bathroom, guys. IIPP stands for Injury and Illness Prevention Program. We have a document that is kind of like the promise of how we're going to do safety here at the facility. So many times it's not there, many times it's not known, employees don't have no idea, or it's not effective. And when I say not effective, it truly is not a tool that you're using to make safety happen at the workplace. And I'll give you a quick example. Maybe you have a safety suggestion box, but nobody opens actual schedule to go and take out whatever people are saying about safety measures, right? Or safety concerns. You put in that document that you're meeting monthly or quarterly, but if so-and-so can't make it and maybe it's not a good day because production it's too demanding for that quarter, you move it and then it doesn't happen. So it's not effective. There's elements, and I'm going to show you the 8 elements, but if it's not effective, you might get cited under the actual section Title 8, California Code of Regulations, Section 3203, right? Injury and Illness Prevention Program. I'll tell you about something else. Hold on a second, because this computer is getting overly heated, and that's because I have my heater on. Give me a second. I'm going to get some ice. And she'll be happy. She gets ice, she works better. Computers, they get a little too warm sometimes. But I didn't want to wear a sweater. Darn, I'm not saving energy. All right, so I told you. Another thing that I wanted to show in this particular slide is the lack of an administrator or the actual responsibility. This happens more so in smaller companies. So what I've seen is when you hire me and you have about 20, 25, up to 50 employees, I consider that a smaller employer, then you kind of just point fingers. Oh, he's in charge of safety. No, he's in charge of safety. And then there is no name on the document that says responsibility. The administrator for the Injury and Illness Prevention Program is, and then a name or a job title. A job title is more than enough as long as that person says, hey, this is how safety is going to happen, and I'm going to make sure these 8 elements are going to take place. And throughout the year, I'm reviewing that things get taken care of. So if recently your safety director got fired and you are in a situation where no one's doing safety, you have to stop pointing fingers and you have to designate a person who administers this program and who makes it happen. The next one is so compliance. You're going to see in one of those elements that compliance is huge. And one of the things that I have found in previous experience is that insurance carriers, insurance companies want to see that you hold your supervisors to a higher standard. So that accountability, right? That your disciplinary policies include a way to also hold supervisors responsible, because many times the injuries are happening amongst your managers and your lead people. And that's not good, because remember, if there's a serious injury or illness and Cal OSHA shows up at your workplace, knowing that this happened to a supervisor and or a lead person hinders your ability to actually appeal and lower those amounts for those penalties. Okay, so the rest of the elements need to be effective. Let me show you. I'm going to stop this share. I'm going to show you some of my some of those non-high hazard. And so there's a high hazard industry list that Cal OSHA puts together, and there's a non-high hazard, right? So right now, what are you seeing? The non-high hazard, it's quite small. So what do I want to say with this? What I want to say with this is that a written program should not be, for a non-high hazard employer, should not be longer than 11 pages. Of course, okay, let's say 15 pages, because you're going to add your own schedule, for example, for schedule inspections. You're going to put the departments there. You're going to put the person in charge. So those are the 8 elements. And instead of bullet points, they should be in, oh, goodness gracious. They should be numbers. Record keeping, and I said 8 because those are the 8 that translate into regular practices. Number 9, which is record keeping, would be the actual ability for you to say, okay, these are the documents that prove that I'm training people. These are documents that prove that I actually have OSHA logs. These are the records that prove. So there is a portion of your written model program that also deals with record keeping, which would be element number 9. Okay, but this is the seal right there on this page that I do not remove. So I do remove things such as model program, etc., or this is a fillable template. Please pay attention to those red letters and make sure that you make it your own. So erase those red letters and make sure you put your own way of doing things that is compliant with the regulation. And you have to go back and forth to Title 8, 3203, a link right there. So they make it really easy for you. I leave the little State of California Cal OSHA seal so that in case an inspector shows up, they see what I used and so that I went off of it. It's a short document for non-high hazard employers, which says who's the administrator, right? And some of you add there, also by department, who helps this administrator with the safety of that department. And then compliance right here, how do we do it? How do we inform workers of what are the rules? How do we evaluate the performance of these workers, right? So you can just check mark and that's A-okay. You can have separate documents. The key thing here is it effective? Meaning, if for the entire year, there's not a single document that says you issued a written warning, for example, or some sort of disciplinary written document amongst your workforce, then your IIPP is not effective because we're bound to make mistakes. And in a whole year, you're bound to have several of these written warnings to employees, issued to employees, even counseling, right? If you're doing counseling notes prior to a warning, all of that becomes proof of you doing this step, compliance. Communication, how do you do communication? And read these documents in your own time, but it really, the black lettering gives you a chance to say, oh, okay, so this is how Cal OSHA wants me to do this part. And then it says, our communication system says, I have a new work orientation program, right? And this is how, I don't have to include it here, but I can refer to it and say where it is at, okay? So we check these items, make it real easy with these check marks. And then your hazard assessment, finding hazards. So if you don't have any inspections that are scheduled, you are not doing this IIPP effectively, because how are you going to find them if you're not walking through your floors, if you're not walking through those field operations? Just randomly pick some and surprise, I'm here just to check that we're doing things right. Employees expect the surprise visits. They show you what they're doing. They even come up with questions. That makes it effective. You get the hint. Now employees get a chance to see you there, even if it's a surprise visit where you are documenting an inspection. They have a chance to come up to you and say, hey, you know what? I'm just glad you're here because today this was thrown our way. And look at this scaffolding. I see this, the axis right over here. And I'm not so sure it can support the structure, but, we're only using the scaffold and the erectors are not here. They came up to you. But if you weren't there, these questions don't come up, right? And even more so, that raises the question, how come these things are not getting to me when I'm not here on the surprise inspections? So more of this, as you see, there's an accident exposure investigation procedure that you have to have in place. We also have classes through UCLA, the continuing education department. Throughout the year, I think I do 2 different classes for this. There's nothing better than hands-on. So I know we've done it online where we pretend there's an incident and we start doing the steps all the way to root cause analysis. And that's something that you have to, one of the greatest things here that I find employers are lacking is training and retraining and refresher training for those that you assign to do investigation of incidents. Trust me, if you did it in the beginning of their employment 10 years ago, that manager, that supervisor already forgot how to do root cause analysis. That's why in your root cause analysis, you get things such as distracted. Employee was distracted and did not look where he was going. But that's not a root cause, right? We all know it's a contributing factor or surface cause, however you choose to define and have your actual plan in place. Nevertheless, these are the things that make your IIPP effective. Hazard correction. How do you go about finding and correcting those things that are unsafe? Training and instruction, a list of topics, and how do you go about doing this? Is it, you have to have a good new worker orientation program. And then you also have to have a temp worker. Oh, goodness gracious. For those of you that have temporary agencies supplying you with workers, you have to train them and be specific to your machines, and because they come with training, documented training. Temp agencies always to sell you all these services, which is really good. They say, oh, this is the list of training topics that we actually provide for workers. The workers that get to go to your facility come with all of this safety training. That's all well and dandy. I just visited one of my clients who said, oh, well, they came with ergonomic training. They know safe lifting. And I said, no, no, no. Now you train them here. They have to know how to lift your product because they haven't lifted that product everywhere else. You have to teach them how to do your particular product because it's awkward, it's really big. You have your own employees have their own method of communicating, etc. You get the hint on this one. And then, not too long ago, they changed the employee access to the IIPP where they require that you put in writing how employees can get a copy of it. And it makes sense because it's anything in this life that is important and worthwhile. It starts when you buy when you get a dog, right? Or when you buy a car and then you get married. It's in writing. It's like sign here. So sign here. And people want a copy of those documents that are important, in this case, IIPP. So this is it. Then record keeping, 2 types of employers. You have to read there and see which one you're going to check. And then they give you a sample for an assessment and correction record. So these are nice forms that you can use. This is for smaller employers or non-high hazard. And then for high hazard employers, let me share that with you again. I just don't want to get behind. Let me see if I can. Okay, hold on. I'm just going to stop the share and share now the actual high hazard one. High hazard. So the high hazard you're going to see is 20 something pages long, which would make it a little bit longer, but you're going to erase and modify. So still not a huge document. Again, what matters is that you really make it a document that it is effective. In this case, what I see that there's a huge difference between the non-high hazard and the high hazard is the additional information so that you find a way to do good inspection. So you can see here, I am scrolling all of this checklist to find hazards. So there is that on this one. It's a longer document. Aside from those forms, they do provide you with checklists to do your hazard assessment. And a worker training and instruction record, which is not my favorite. And I'll tell you why, because employee name, training date, type of training, trainers. There's several things missing here. I've given you guys in the past my roster, because in my roster, I will document the language in which the training took place, language and also the duration. Those 2 things are important in case of an audit or an OSHA inspection, because if you say that you talked about heat illness and you have a lot of field employees that are mainly speaking Spanish or Tagalog or whatever other thing, and you never documented what language, you don't know. And then no, there is an actual reason why these workers didn't know this information, and that's because the training wasn't effective. So some things that you can change, all right? Let's go back to my PowerPoint there. So you should already have a couple of to-dos, and one of those is making sure that I go back to my IIPP. I know where it is. I know, are we actually observing the things that we are promising we're going to do, that kind of thing. There is the actual list of high hazard industries. For those of you that are wondering, okay, so what model of IIPP should I follow? If, let's say, you are in the dry pasta, dough and flour mix manufacturing, guess what? You're considered high hazard. And depending on your experience verification rate, I think someone, give me a quick second. I don't know. There's a lot of noise going on. I apologize. I think there's some deliveries being made and there's a lot of noise. Okay. it gave you a little bit of a break from my voice. Okay, so there is the high hazard list, and you can tell which of those model programs to use. Okay, the next one would be, okay, give me a quick second, please. I'm gonna Zoom call.
Could you just open the door for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, that was lovely. Lovely, lovely. Okay, so then we go back to the actual list, right? Number 2. Guess what do you think, or which one do you think will be number 2? It's going to be heat illness. And you are now making notes. Heat illness is the number 2. And you're thinking, well, but Section 3395 only refers to outdoor heat illness. So that doesn't apply to me. I am in a warehouse environment. Yeah, it gets hot, but we're giving them cold towels. Nothing else. Okay. So my first question to you, here we go. If you stop for a moment and asked, and I put Panfilo, which is, the name of any of your workers, any given worker, any given day out in the field, right? Hey, Panfilo, do you know how to lower the body temperature on your friend, on your buddy, in case he's not feeling well and it is a very hot day? How would you do that? And he just stops for a moment. He doesn't know what to say. He's not so sure. And okay, that's very crucial. Emergency procedures per the regulation is a requirement that every single employee exposed to outdoor heat knows how to respond in case of an emergency. And what's even more important is that employees know the difference between just the beginning of heat illness, when it's just, those early symptoms. And I talk about this during my trainings. If I've been to your facility, you know that we role play. And I love the role play because it's really fun. Everybody laughs, and they'll actually do this. How do we respond? And we have different scenarios, from early symptoms where someone is just not feeling up to par. They're grouchier that day and people laugh because, you're always grouchy kind of thing. But it just triggers that memory aid, right? Everybody installs, every single one of my clients has the app, the NIOSH app for the prevention of heat illness, which is a reminder of those early symptoms. So if you don't remember, workers can go and say, oh, okay, irritability, headache, thirst. You know what, buddy, you got to go and cool off and drink some water, and until your symptoms go away, you can come back, right? And reminding them, etc. So another of the things that I want to make sure I tackle during this role play situation is, what if this person is about to go into a stroke, heat stroke? So actually discussing the symptoms of heat stroke, right? And that's when they stop sweating. They're really red and confusion. Hey, buddy, what's your name? Do you know where we're at? And they're like, I don't know, man. Yeah. Who's the president? I'm low. And it's like, what? So you have to make sure that your workers know how to respond, and the difference between early symptoms and, heat stroke, and what would be, time to call 911. And what is huge with this, because this is all about prevention of these things, is whenever you have people working alone, that you have ways of getting them the help they need immediately. Because the last thing you want is for them to be stranded and faint, and no one attends to them, and then it's too late. They're dead. Or for those that are out there in the field in golf carts or in on their own, that their body doesn't know how to respond, or their coworker doesn't know how to respond. And the last thing you want them to say is like, okay, you're not feeling good. Oh, you're throwing up. Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on right here. I'll go get help. Why is that employee doing that? Because he doesn't know how to lower body temperature during a hot day, right? And so during the role play, you have them sit down. I even take off their shoes if they'll let me, right? And everybody's like, oh, it stinks, whatever. But it's a memory aid. They will not forget that you actually try and get layers off the safety vest and the hat, and you put them in a cool area or under the shade, and you spray them and mist them, or put the cold packs. You have to make sure you practice this. Sometimes there's no procedures on site. Sometimes you forget to do this. Encouraging, because the wording in the regulation is encouraging to drink water. You don't document that pre-shift heat illness safety reminders, or and more to come this summer 2024. I think, because the indoor heat regulation has been in the works for a couple of years, that it may be out middle of 2024 when the heat is really striking all of those indoor places of employment. And it will bring some issues of, can we install AC in these areas? If we can't, how about industrial fans? If we can't, so first, as you know, engineering controls, the pyramid of NIOSH pyramid hierarchy of controls. If I'm speaking Chinese to those of you, just send me an email, ask the questions. Hierarchy of controls, engineering controls need to be implemented. If not, it's going to get to the point where you're going to have to rotate personnel in those areas that are really hot because of machinery and equipment, or they're too sunny because you roll up the doors, they stay rolled up all day. You need to have them that way. So measuring the actual temperature, which you haven't done up until this regulation comes to be in place. And last but not least, a DVD or video will not do the trick. So there is videos out there that will, I think they're a very good aid in getting the information done. But the reason why a DVD on heat illness is not enough for your training is because it's not specific. Again, same thing as with the IIPP. Well, if I was working for a landscape client, and on those walkthroughs, I realized that the guys here in Laguna Beach had to go and plant by going way, these hotels are beautiful and the landscaping is just gorgeous. And so they had to go down the hill and blah, 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 and they didn't want to carry the big 5-gallon jugs of water. They just carried their own little bottle, and that was it. But that doesn't encourage them to drink, because when that little bottle is done, the last thing they want to do is climb up the hill to go get more water. So that's not encouraging, you see. So we had to come up with ways to say, you set up your station and you bring the darn thing down the hill to where they're going to be planting and where they're going to be doing this work. So the reason why the DVD or video will not do the trick is because it will not tell the supervisor that every time he's out there in any workplace where there's a hill like that, that he has to bring the jug all the way down to the workers. So more specific means that supervisors are providing this information that is very valuable to workers, such as, hey guys, you get to that site and this one has a hill, you're bringing the water to your crew. So if there's a crew of 4 or 3 workers, you're bringing the water right there. So it's much better to do that than having you guys faint on me. So specific, that's what they want. And number 3, topmost cited, is, again, the injury and illness prevention program, but this is for construction. For those of you that took my class, I forget what class, I did go over kind of finding some of the standards, and every time that you see the section number in the 15 or the thousands, it's construction. And so one of the most, the mistakes that you have are the same as in the number 1, topmost cited, the general industry lack of having an injury and illness prevention program, etc. I went over that. But the other thing is, you really have help in construction in finding a lot of information in this OSHA pocket guide for the construction industry. Is very user-friendly. So they distribute it in small books. That's why it's called a pocket guide. But you also can access it online. So just Google it and you can print this guide and put it or provide it to your managers, superintendents, etc. Number 4 is COVID. Of course it was going to be COVID. They had to be somewhere because we didn't have an emergency prevention standard for so long. And now it's a permanent standard. And, you know, who wants to keep talking about it? I did a full year series on COVID, right? But there's still some resources. And here's what I see. We still don't, some of us waited so long till this thing went away that we never developed an actual written prevention program for COVID. And now it went away because now they give you a chance to just incorporate it as part of your injury and illness prevention program, which that wording is not my favorite, because then it's like, okay, so she showed me the model program. How do I put that in there? It's better to just have separate written procedures for all of these things. Keep your IIPP as short, as succinct as possible, right? And these things can go separately if they're required of you, like they are from all of us will have exposure to COVID-19. So we have to have some written procedures. There's great resources. So I have one right here. And what I see from my places of employment is, you know, just the lack of reminding workers, you know, how to screen themselves. And remember, this is not for those of you that are in healthcare or any of those types of industries where you have to look into 5199, which is the aerosol transmissible disease standard, because that one will deal with the actual exposure just because it's part of your job, right? This, mind you, even hospitals and healthcare will look into this standard 3205 because you have occupations such as the billing department or the administrators that are not exposed to the actual suspected cases for COVID. So for those people that are not obeying or not covered under 5199, you have to do COVID-19 prevention under 3205. So those are the issues that get you in trouble. So of course, it was going to be in the top 5 as most cited. And then we get this one, which is an interesting one. It's reporting serious injuries and illnesses and also fatalities. So it is under section 342 of Title 8 of the Code of Regulations. Why do we forget to actually report? And when we say report, that means picking up the phone and calling Cal OSHA. Now, let me stop right here. There's 2 parts to Cal OSHA. There is the consultation service and there is the actual enforcement, right? So consultation and enforcement. And enforcement are the guys that go out there whenever there are complaints that they feel there's some reason for these to be valid, and they go out there and they want to find out what's going on or why we endangering employees. Consultation are there to help. They can also enroll you into any of their voluntary protection programs, the VPP, the Golden Gate, but they're there to help. They're not there to cite you. Of course, if they give you recommendations and they see there's some issues for the safety and health of workers and you fail to correct them because you forgot to look at your budget before you call them, things like that, you may get in trouble and they may pass your file to enforcement, which makes sense, right? Because we want to make sure people are safe. No one should risk their life just because they come to work for you, unless you're a Cirque du Soleil. No, Cirque du Soleil doesn't exist anymore, right? So we are not a circus. We are not here to have people getting hurt while they work for us. We got to do safety and we got to help these people. So when someone gets hurt, there's a requirement for you to report the serious injuries and illnesses and also fatalities. But why do we forget? Why do we not do it? Because it's in the top most cited. Because we don't have the knowledge. We don't have a person that does this, or we don't have people that know, are we supposed to call Cal OSHA? Are we supposed to report this? And by the way, who do you call? Enforcement. Enforcement. You pick up the phone and you call them. There's a Cal OSHA enforcement or district office in your area. If you don't know which one it is, just Google it or go to the Cal OSHA webpage and they will tell you where your facility, your location belongs to. So there's also different numbers for the consultation, but you do have an enforcement and a consultation Cal OSHA office that you can call. Nice. So lack of knowledge, because in 2020, January 1st, 2020, the definition of serious injury or illness changed. And basically what it did is it took away that confusing time frame, because there was like, well, if they go and they get inpatient hospitalized for more than 24 hours, then you have 8 hours to go ahead and give us a call. It's like, what? Okay, so do I not, he's been hospitalized and the doctor says that he might, and it's 23 hours and I don't know what to do. Now it's changed. There's several things that changed. It also changed serious exposure, which is good. But for serious injury and illness, it just amputations. Whenever an amputation is an interesting one because it could be just the tip of the finger, right? And you have to have good communication with your physicians. What is it that they're being seen for? Oh, look, they did write it down in the report as an amputation, although it was just the tip of the pinky finger. Boom, you have to call and report that as a serious injury or illness because the definition includes amputations, right? It also says that inpatient hospitalization for any length of time. That means the moment they get admitted, you're picking up the phone and calling. You have an 8-hour window. But here is the catch. If you are enrolled in my annual safety service program, you can call me, text me, and just, okay, so am I supposed to report this? And some of you right now are calling me a lot or texting me a lot regarding record keeping. Am I supposed to record this? Because this is the time of the year when we send those logs to OSHA. For those of you submitting your 300A log, make sure you submit now because submission is open already. Okay, it started January 2nd. Okay, so you can have more questions than this one, but please have at least the procedures on how or when to call OSHA because of a serious injury or illness. Now, number 6 is lockout tagout or lockout blockout, how Cal OSHA likes to call it, section 3314. Lots to discuss about this one. Machinery guarding, guards, and lockout tagout go hand in hand because whenever a machine is in use and machines break down and machines need lubrication and machines need some sort of intervention from humans, from the worker, from the operator. And there's a lot of confusion as to, can I do this? Can I actually open this door and put my hands in there while the motion is happening? And it can be very subtle, actually, because there's machinery and equipment that doesn't seem harmful, even if it's in motion. And a lot of the times it's because the motion happens slowly and it's easy to see, and the worker feels like, I'm not going to get hurt. And the manager says, of course you're not going to get hurt. You're never going to get close enough that you fall in or it's going to hurt you. And if you do trip or something, it's going so slow, it gives you a chance to get up. So we make excuses and we justify these things when the regulation is quite clear, right? If something is guarded because there's movement, etc., but it needs to be lubricated or maintained, etc., you have to have procedures to isolate the energy so that you do not expose the workers to the danger of a machine energizing when they're working on it. So we did have an issue a couple years ago that we discussed with you guys that it was very enlightening, and that was a supervisor getting 2 workers to unjam a machine, and they opened the guard, they removed the door for the guarding. It was an elevator and bucket system, right? And so they removed the debris, but one of the workers was not knowledgeable in the procedures of lockout tagout. As a matter of fact, the whole operation was taking place without the use of the lockout tagout procedure because it's usually maintenance who does this unjamming of the elevator and bucket system. And they didn't want to wait because of production demands, right? So they do not wait, and then they ask one of those temp workers to help. And they had unjammed the machine just enough that they thought maybe it's going to go now if we turn it on and off. But break time was there. They went to take a break. They took a break. They ate or whatever. Supervisor gets up, talks to his worker, takes him to the actual controls and starts the machine, not knowing that the temp worker after the break had gone straight to the machine to keep on jamming. And so, of course, his arm gets trapped in the elevator and bucket because it did get enough momentum to move. And you can imagine the type of injury. So now you see why it is number 6, right? So it gives you to do. If you haven't done any of this, looking into the procedures, there's individual, why individual? And you can ask me questions about my slides because I really just go off of what my head is telling me. Individual procedures means each machine and equipment should have their own lockout tagout procedures, their own steps, because they're all different. There's very few times where the machines are identical. And you may have that situation where your machines are identical and they don't need to have an individual procedure, okay? And there's a specific portion of the regulation that deals with the same machinery and if it's allowed or not for you to have the same procedure for 2 machines. There's mandated periodic inspections to detect mistakes in your steps. And then, the lack of knowledge that lockout tagout is actually needed because of the issue of removing a guard, something that seems very inconspicuous. It's like the person is like, no, but I'm just removing this guard and putting my hand in there just to move the part or to clean it up every time that it gets stuck. And so the worker is not aware whether or not that necessitates a lockout tagout procedure. Number 7, portable fire extinguishers. It's not a surprise that this was going to make the list. I find this all the time. And the number 1 issue with it is that they're blocked. They're buried in some wall and, you have a ton of deliveries in front of it or product, or you can't even see that the darn extinguisher is there. And there's no visual inspection. So they all have this little tag with the 12 spots for each month. And because you consider it very annoying to walk around the entire manufacturing plant or your entire building to do a visual inspection once a month on these, you don't do them. It's required. It's required. A visual inspection is quick. You're just checking the integrity of the tank, the hose. These things are on the wall for a very long time. So this hose is cracked, or someone removes the actual little plastic tie that keeps that secured and in place so that it's not activated by mistake, etc. One of the things that I did ask OSHA about the training is hands-on training required? And the answer is that it's not required per the regulation, but it is preferred. And it makes sense, right? If you do not have an actual, the actual feeling of how the actual extinguisher feels and how you should do the putting a small fire, we call it incipient stage of a fire, and you talk about those things. And first and foremost, this is very important. We talk about safety. And so when I do hands-on training for portable fire extinguishers, the first thing I say is, listen, if there's a fire, you sound the alarm and you evacuate. Okay. So it's different when we're talking about maybe the welders, operations where there's hot work. And so they have their extinguisher nearby and they know when to use it. Okay. And they, of course, they get the hands-on training, and it's once a year, every 12 months. Otherwise, you're out of compliance. But the truth is, for anybody else, the fire extinguishers are there, and maybe you did receive the training. But if there's a fire, you sound the alarm according to your procedures and you evacuate, right? You do not put yourself in danger. Lack of a formal fire prevention program. So I see this a lot too, and you should include this in your assessment of what are the issues that could cause or bring a fire to your facility. Topmost item number 8. Hey guys, no questions? No questions. I don't see any questions. But Lindsay, you alert me if there's anybody raising their hand or anything like that. Hazard communication always makes it at the top 10, even for federal OSHA. And this has to do with the chemicals you have at your facility, right? There's the guide. There's a beautiful guide provided by Cal OSHA, and I have the picture right there, and I can get you the link if you want. This guide will go through step-by-step compliance with the hazard communication, section 5194. But here are the things that I see most commonly are lacking or out of compliance. And this is how this information becomes very valuable, because I'm sure you already have a list of to-dos. So after today's session, you're going back there and you're making sure, for example, that your IIPP has a designated administrator. You're checking, am I high hazard, non-high hazard, right? Your type of industry. You're checking for things such as heat illness. When did we do the last training? Are people really knowledgeable about emergency procedures? Do they know what heat stroke is versus early stages of heat illness? Do we have that NIOSH heat app that she was talking about that says, you have to-dos, you already made a list. And in regards of hazard communication, safety data sheet, for those of you that still call it MSDS, that's okay. Material safety data sheets, that's an old term. But after the global harmonized system was implemented by OSHA, was it in 2012? I believe it was 2012. They require that you trained everyone in regards to those pictograms that you see on the screen with the red diamond shape and the meaning, and employees needed to know all of that. So what I see most often is that workers do not know what an SDS is. And when you remind them, they're like, oh yeah, but they don't know how to access those SDSs. And then I have some managers or supervisors that do safety that they swear each employee knows how to access SDSs. Well, just test it. Just go out there to your field or your plant today and just pick any one of your workers. Pick Wilbur, Panfilo, Juan, whoever. Just grab one of your workers, say, can you show me the SDS for the acetone you're working with, or for the, whatever SDS for, or the chemical that he's working with, or the oil, the lubricant that he's working. Where is that information? And then he'll go to the station, sit in front of the computer, and turn around and say, I forgot. Is it that you see? And that bingo. So he doesn't know. That's what you. And then I have a quick question here. How often should we do heat illness refresher training? Once a year. I really, really would like to see it once a year, but here's the catch. Anytime, and this is what the regulation says. So this is a great, great question. Anytime it gets to be 85 degrees and above, I would already be doing a reminder. And then for those of you that know that there's high heat procedures at 95 degrees. So if it's going to be a very hot 95 degrees, the regulation calls for an actual pre-shift training session. You see, it's not that easy. So what does that mean? If it's going to be very hot, 95 and above, you're mandated to document training. And this training doesn't need to take an hour. It could be your 15-minute talk, 5-10 minutes where 5 minutes in English, 5 minutes in Spanish, 5 in Tagalog, where you actually tell, and it's just an example, okay? Where you say, okay, today is going to be very hot. Remember to drink water. This is the location of the water. So you're encouraging them. Remember to have it right there on your tool belt. And the refill is going to be right next to you. So there's no excuse for you not to drink. Remember, we're doing buddy systems. We cannot leave anyone alone. Remember. And so you remind emergency procedures. Remember how to lower the body temperature on the workers. And then you just review it really quickly. So this training takes place more than once during the year. Awesome question. Okay, so we have this, and by the way, I did the trigger temperature is 80 degrees. I'm sorry, I went with the old trigger. 80 degrees or more, I would, because during the year you will hit those heat waves, boom, do a reminder, right? And right there, you're not required to document it, but once again, anything that you do not document never happened. So 95 degrees or more for the day, you're required to document a pre-shift meeting. Awesome question. The next thing that I see is people bring chemicals to the site. Going back to our number 8 here. People bring chemicals to the site and you have no idea what they brought. So you don't have an SDS for it, right? So you have to have a better purchasing procedure in place. Labeling requirements, tons of secondary containers, spray bottles, little bottles that people cut in half and now they use them as containers. So any secondary container, and what I mean by secondary container is if you're pouring alcohol from a big bottle to a small little container because you're going to use it right now, or acid, whatever you're doing, that secondary container has to be labeled. Yes, there is an exemption. I don't like it. Just do it. Just label everything. Prop 65 signage requirements. I see this a lot, especially because in August 2018, some of the requirements got a little stricter where you cannot do this on your screen, where you just have the little yellow diamond shape warning, and then you just do a general warning. Hey, there's chemicals in here, it could hurt you. After 2018, we're required to put the name of the chemical, which is above those safe harbor limits. And we need to post them in areas where the exposure is happening. Not at every door, just where the exposure is happening, all right? So very cool. It makes sense. It's a documented pre-shift meeting for heat illness prevention, part of the general industry as well. Oh, I love this. So this is a great question, Jorge. We do not have, so general industry means everyone, right? Outside of maritime or construction. So I assume, Jorge, you are in general industry. So the regulation right now is for outdoor heat. That means it covers people that are working and exposed to the direct sunlight at some part of the day. So we have those gray jobs, gray zone area jobs or job positions where the workers are half outside, driving a forklift, they come into a warehouse, then the warehouse doesn't have AC, it's hot, and you're thinking, but they're not outdoor. So the outdoor heat illness does not apply. Well, guess what? You should have some written procedures for heat illness because they are going outdoors and they're being exposed to that and they're driving their forklift, which a forklift doesn't have AC. There's no way they're going to cool off, right? Between driving the forklift and coming into the warehouse, they're not cooling off. So you put the outdoor heat illness prevention program in place for sure, right? So that answers that question because I'm going to be doing pre-shift meetings every time the 95-degree mark is there. Okay, awesome questions. Love it. Of course, portable ladders, we're gonna make it into the top 10 most cited in California. Why do we get in trouble? Because it's the most dangerous tool around. Why is it so dangerous? My grandpa had it in his garage. Everybody grows up from the womb. You use a ladder to come out of the womb. You use a step stool to come out of the womb. It's because we see them as tools that are so harmless that they become very dangerous. So I'll give you an example of what I just saw in one of my walkthroughs, okay? And I'll go to the next. So there is this machine that brings a product on a railing system. It brings it out of an oven, and then the product is hanging from the arm of the machine. Once it's secured and there's no hazard because there's no more movement. Now, just the mold has cooled off or whatever. The part needs to be brought down or needs to be taken out of this portion, okay? For that, you set your tools, and because of the way the machine is set up, you need a ladder to get to the product. Now, if you pick, and by the way, the picture on top, I got up on that ladder to see how that would look and how it would feel. Because mind you, I didn't catch or I didn't see the worker doing the task, but the task was explained to me. So I'm glad because this will prevent a future incident. So I feel bad that you guys spend so much money in expensive ladders. In this case, this was a professional heavy duty ladder. So 375 pounds, twin ladder. So that means you can have workers on one side or the other. And I feel bad because it's such a good ladder, but it is the wrong ladder for the job. You need a podium type ladder where the worker can actually, and the ladder is designed for the worker to do those motions, to work with his tools and reach where he needs to reach. Okay, and in this case, you would bring it a little bit back, right? But a podium ladder would be a much better tool. So don't buy ladders before you have analyzed the tasks. And there's awesome tools to analyze tasks such as job hazard analysis, etc. But in this case, please do not buy new ladders. And mind you, for any task that you need to be reaching or be working at heights, there is a ladder for you. There are so many. I love Little Giant. My ladder here at the house is a Little Giant ladder. I love them because it even has one of those secure audible things that when you step off the last rung, it makes a clicking noise so that you know you are at the last rung. Why is that important? Because most of the injuries, believe it or not, statistically occur coming off the ladder when they're stepping off the last rung. And that's because you think that there's no more rungs to go, and then you twist an ankle. Lots of twisted ankles. So even little things like that, when you know you're ladder and it's clicking, oh, that's the last rung. Oh my gosh, it'll save you from an ankle injury. So make sure that you look into good options depending on the tasks you're doing. And if you spend money on the wrong ladder, hey, what's better, to have that risk of workers falling off the ladder or getting the right ladder and using it appropriately? And of course, we see a lot of the issues with, not storing it appropriately, having them opened and set up all the time when they should be out of the way, because they are a tripping hazard. The legs, when you open, and when we talk about portable ladders, I'm only talking about self-supporting. Then we're talking to extension ladders, we're non-self-supporting. It's the whole world. You could be a ladder guru if you wish. So, OSHA has a beautiful 7-step compliant e-tool. And I actually developed a training guide for my supervisors and they use it. I have it bilingual. And if you need it, please let me know. It's just wonderful. We go through each of those steps. It's a good way to remind you what you need to discuss with your workers, and you have to do it with your ladders right there. So we just did it last week in one of my clients' space. We brought the portable ladder that they most use, and they don't use extension ladders, so that was easy. But if you have extension ladders and portable ladders and orchard ladders and whatever ladder you're using, wooden ladders, aluminum, whatever you're using, you have to go over each of these steps, how to inspect them, how to choose the ladder, etc. But you see why it was in the top 10? Oh. And then last but not least, this one is so common, you guys, the emergency eye wash and shower equipment. Absolutely, Mario, we'll get it for you. Especially because I see you guys so often. So yes, I will send you that. Lindsay, just remind me to send the ladder trainer's guide that I developed for my clients. I will give it to this class.
Sure.
Thank you. Last but not least, the emergency eye wash and shower. What you see on the screen is not an emergency eye wash station, okay? So most of you in general industry handle chemicals. And here is the catch. Anytime a chemical calls for first aid measures to rinse for more than 15 minutes, these things are not going to cut it. These things are not going to rinse the eye for 15 minutes of continuous flow. That's why emergency eye wash stations have to comply with ANSI standards. They're incorporated by reference, right? ANSI 358.1, I believe, is the standard, the ANSI standard. So get yourself a good. Yes, we will distribute it, Andrew. Thank you. So get yourself a, go online and look at the different emergency eye wash and make sure that they are ANSI compliant, 358.1. And then when you install it, make sure that you install it according to manufacturer's recommendations, okay? If you're gonna get a portable unit, that's fine. Just make sure that you also change the water and add the solution that they want you to add so that it doesn't develop bacteria, and then now you're putting more stuff into the eyes. Another of the things that I see very often is that these eye wash stations are obstructed and the stations are not maintained because most of the time, because OSHA does not call for a weekly bump test, you don't do them, you don't document them, but guess what? Your manufacturer is requiring it. They tell you, and every week you gotta just make sure some water comes out so that it cleans all the debris on the actual head of the emergency eye wash station. So the lack of the record, and what is that? That's my actual spelling correction. I meant to say and then it put that. I'm sorry, just quick mistake. So some example, I'm sorry, this picture came too blurry. Some example of some of those common injurious corrosive materials that, some of the workplaces frequently expose workers and there's no eye wash station. So you got to look at the ANSI standards, but you also look at the OSHA standard because Section 5162 will talk about traveling distance, for example, and it should be 10-second traveling distance from where the injurious material is at. Wow. So that tells you where to put your eye wash and shower stations. Yep, definitely something that I see very frequently in my walks with you guys. So here's the link for the top 10 most frequently cited. I'll go ahead and put it in the chat. You get a ton of good info with that. Chat. It's not appearing in my chat. Right. There we go. So do you take a look at it? It's great info. It'll go through each one of these that we looked at today in more detail, but it also will give you a chance to visit. Let me see if I can. Okay, this is another link, and I'm going to put it also on the chat. That is very important. It'll actually show you names of companies that have been cited already or inspected, that OSHA has showed up to their sites, and what they were cited on. And it's important, for example, for the first one, I remember taking a look at it and I saw that healthcare group got cited because of the emergency eye wash stations were out of compliance. So good info to bring to your decision makers to actually buy you those portable eye wash stations, right? Nice. Guys, we're done. Wasn't that cool? Did we fulfill our objective? So we did identify the top 10 most cited. Did we explain the reasons why this particular safety standards are frequently cited? I think we did. We talked about examples and experiences. And the last thing was the risks and hazards associated with noncompliance. And one of the most obvious that stands right away in my head is the latter one, or the lockout tagout, right? So there's much risk, many hazards that are associated when we don't comply, minimum required, right? But I always want you to go beyond what is required because that's the way we do safety. Thank you guys. You're awesome. Have a fantastic weekend. I enjoy having you in my class. Lindsay will forward this slides, and then we'll go ahead and also give you that guide, the trainer's guide for ladder safety. Pair it up with the e-tool by OSHA, okay? And sign up for the 10-hour in February, please. It's in Irvine. It's a beautiful campus, a beautiful place, and I'll be there. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you so much, Alba. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lindsay. You're the best. Thank